I stood at that altar in my custom wedding gown, microphone in hand, watching Gregory's face drain of color. He thought marrying me would bury his secrets forever. He thought I'd stay silent, but what I was about to say would cost him everything: his fortune, his reputation, his freedom. Before I tell you how I brought down one of the most powerful men in real estate, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will restore your faith in justice. My name is Claudette Morrison, and if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be standing at an altar exposing a billionaire's crimes instead of marrying him, I would have laughed in your face. But life has a funny way of taking you places you never expected. Let me take you back to where it all began, because understanding how I got there is the only way to understand why I did what I did. I was 32 years old, running my own architecture firm in Manhattan. I'd spent my entire adult life clawing my way to that point. Scholarship kid from Detroit, first in my family to go to college, worked 3 jobs to pay for grad school at Cornell. By the time I opened my firm, I'd already designed sustainable housing projects in 4 cities and won 2 national awards. I wasn't rich, but I was respected. I'd made something of myself, and that meant everything to me. That's when Gregory Whitmore entered my world. Picture this: 6'3", silver fox handsome, custom suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and a presence that made every room feel smaller. He owned Whitmore Properties, one of the biggest real estate development companies in the country. Commercial high-rises, luxury residential towers, entire shopping districts. The man had more money than some small countries. Forbes estimated his net worth at $4 billion. $4 billion. I can't even conceptualize that kind of wealth. We met at a fundraiser for urban renewal projects. I was there because my firm had donated pro bono work for a community arts center in Brooklyn. He was there because billionaires show up to these things, write enormous checks, and get their names on plaques. But when he approached me at the cocktail hour, something felt different. He asked about my work, and not in that dismissive way powerful people usually do. He asked follow-up questions. He remembered details. He seemed genuinely fascinated when I talked about green architecture and sustainable design. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number. Our first date was at this intimate Italian restaurant in the West Village. Then came a weekend trip to his villa in Tuscany. Yes, Tuscany, on a private jet. We'd known each other for 3 weeks. He took me to gallery openings, Broadway premieres, charity galas, where I rubbed elbows with senators and celebrities. He introduced me as his brilliant architect girlfriend, and the way he said it made me feel like I'd finally found someone who saw my worth, someone who celebrated my success instead of being intimidated by it. 4 months in, he proposed. And he didn't just propose privately over a quiet dinner. No, Gregory Whitmore did everything big. He proposed at the annual Metropolitan Arts Gala in front of 5,000 people. Live orchestra, spotlights, the works. He got down on one knee on that massive stage, pulled out a ring with a diamond the size of a marble, and asked me to marry him while thousands of people watched. The crowd started chanting. Cameras flashed like lightning, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. I said yes. How could I not? The whole world was watching, and in that moment, it felt like a fairy tale. The media went absolutely insane. We were on magazine covers, morning talk shows, society pages. They ate up the narrative: successful black woman architect and billionaire real estate mogul, modern love story, power couple, the future. I started getting interview requests, speaking invitations, opportunities I'd never dreamed of. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect actually, but I was too caught up in the whirlwind to notice. Then, about 3 months before the wedding, things started shifting. Subtly at first, Gregory began checking my phone when he thought I wasn't paying attention. He'd casually ask where I'd been, who I'd talked to, what we'd discussed. When I mentioned lunch with my college friends, he'd make comments like, "Don't you think you should be focusing on wedding planning instead of wasting time with people from your past?" When I got excited about a major project my firm landed, a sustainable housing development in Philadelphia, he seemed irritated rather than proud. He said maybe I should consider scaling back my work, focus on being a partner to him, support his vision. Red flags, right? I saw them. I just didn't want to believe what they meant. Then his assistant, Patricia, pulled me aside one afternoon. Patricia was this sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who'd worked for Gregory for over a decade. She cornered me in the hallway outside his office, glanced around to make sure no one was listening, and said 6 words that changed everything. "You're the 4th one. Be careful." Before I could ask what she meant, she walked away, leaving me standing there with my heart racing. 4th one. 4th what? 4th fiancé? That couldn't be right. I knew Gregory had been married once before, years ago, to some supermodel whose name I could never remember. But 4th? I tried to dismiss it as office drama, maybe jealousy, but those words burrowed into my brain and wouldn't leave. 2 weeks later, I was at Gregory's penthouse, working on some design mock-ups while he attended a business dinner. I was in his study, and when I reached for my coffee, I knocked the mug over. Coffee went everywhere, including onto his desk. While I was frantically cleaning it up, I noticed one of the drawers wasn't fully closed. There was a sliver of space, and I could see the edge of a manila folder inside. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I opened that drawer, and what I found inside made my blood run cold. There were 5 folders, each labeled with a woman's name: Simone Baptiste, Diane Winters, Lucia Henderson. 2 other names I didn't recognize. Inside each folder were documents, settlement agreements, non-disclosure agreements, bank transfer records, medical evaluations, psychological assessments. There were engagement announcements clipped from newspapers and magazines, photos of Gregory with each woman at various events, looking exactly like the photos of us that had been plastered all over the media. I sat on the floor of that study and read through every single page. Simone Baptiste had been a cardiac surgeon at Johns Hopkins. Diane Winters had been a celebrated civil rights attorney. Lucia Henderson had been a tenured professor specializing in African American literature at Columbia University. All of them brilliant, all of them accomplished, all of them Black women, and all of them had been engaged to Gregory Whitmore. The settlement amounts ranged from $2 to $5 million. The NDAs were ironclad, threatening complete financial destruction if violated. But what made me physically sick were the handwritten notes in the margins. Next to Simone's file, medical license suspended, mission accomplished. Next to Diane's, disbarment successful, ethics scandal placed in 3 major outlets. Next to Lucia's, plagiarism allegations went public, tenure revoked. This man hadn't just left these women. He'd systematically destroyed their entire lives. I took photos of everything with shaking hands, put the folders back exactly as I'd found them, and left that penthouse like the floor was on fire. I sat in my car for an hour, just trying to breathe, trying to process what I'd discovered. When Gregory called asking where I'd gone, I lied and said I wasn't feeling well. He offered to come take care of me. I told him no. For the first time since I'd met him, I heard the edge in his voice when I refused him something. That night, I found Diane Winters. It took some digging, but I discovered she was living in a small town in Oregon, working as a consultant for a legal aid nonprofit. I emailed her, then called, then sent a message through LinkedIn. Finally, 3 days later, she agreed to meet me. We met at a diner 2 hours outside of Portland. She was striking, probably in her early 40s, with intelligent eyes that looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. She didn't even wait for me to explain why I was there. She just said, "You found the files." I nodded. She sighed, ordered coffee, and told me everything. She'd been engaged to Gregory for 8 months. During that time, mysterious complaints were filed against her with the State Bar Association. Witnesses came forward claiming she'd coached clients to commit perjury years earlier. The evidence was completely fabricated, but by the time she could prove that, the media had already destroyed her reputation. Gregory's lawyers offered her $5 million and an NDA. She took it because fighting would have bankrupted her and accomplished nothing. "Why does he do this?" I asked. Diane stirred her coffee slowly before answering. "Because he can. Because he needs the world to see him with successful, accomplished black women on his arm so he can play the progressive billionaire. But he can't actually handle a woman who doesn't need him, who has her own power. So he proposes publicly, gets his good press, and then spends the engagement systematically dismantling everything we've built. By the time the wedding approaches, we're so broken down that we either sign his papers and disappear quietly, or we fight and he destroys us publicly. Either way, we're gone, and he moves on to the next one." I contacted Simone and Lucia next. Simone was practicing at a small clinic in rural Montana, a far cry from performing heart surgeries at Johns Hopkins. During her engagement to Gregory, patients began filing complaints about botched procedures that never actually happened. The hospital investigated, and though she was eventually cleared, her career never recovered. Lucia was teaching part-time at a community college after Columbia put her on leave during a plagiarism investigation regarding her dissertation from 15 years prior. The accusations were baseless, but the damage was done. All three women warned me that fighting Gregory Whitmore was impossible. He had unlimited resources, connections in every powerful institution, and a ruthlessness that knew no boundaries. "Save yourself," Simone told me. "Take whatever money he offers and disappear. Your pride isn't worth your life." But I couldn't do that, because I had something these women hadn't known existed when they were in my position. Evidence of all three of their cases. I had photos of those files, and I had time. Gregory didn't know I'd found anything, and the wedding was still 2 months away. I reached out to Trevor Banks, an investigative journalist who'd made his name exposing corruption among the ultra-wealthy. I sent him everything I had. Within 10 days, he'd uncovered even more. Bank records showing payments to false witnesses, emails between Gregory and his business partner, Harrison Cole, discussing their projects. That's what they called us, projects to be managed and eliminated. Recorded phone conversations about planting evidence and bribing officials. Trevor discovered the pattern went back even further. I wasn't the fourth, I was the seventh. 3 other women before Simone had been paid off so early they'd never even made it to public engagement announcements. But we had a problem. NDAs, even when covering up criminal activity, are complicated to break. We needed something bigger, something undeniable, something that couldn't be buried under legal motions and settlements. Then Gregory made his move. Suddenly, my firm was being audited by the IRS for supposed irregularities going back 5 years. A major client received an anonymous email claiming I'd stolen design concepts from a junior architect. Building inspectors found code violations in projects that had passed inspection years earlier. My bank accounts were frozen due to suspicious financial activity. My professional licenses were placed under review for unspecified ethical concerns. I watched my life being taken apart, piece by piece, exactly as had happened to Simone, Diane, and Lucia. Gregory was perfectly sympathetic through all of it. He'd hold me while I cried, stroke my hair, and say things like, "Don't worry, darling. Once we're married, you won't need to work so hard anyway. You can focus on supporting my vision, and together we'll build something even greater." He made it sound caring, protective, but I knew exactly what he was doing. 3 weeks before the wedding, his lawyer presented me with papers. They called it a prenuptial agreement, but my attorney took one look and called me immediately. "Claudette, this isn't a prenup. This is an NDA disguised as marriage paperwork. If you sign this, you cannot speak about Gregory, his business, his past relationships, or anything he deems confidential for the rest of your life. Violate it, and you lose everything, plus face financial penalties that would destroy you completely." Gregory gave me until Friday to sign. He said it over dinner, casual, as discussing vacation plans. I need to protect my interests, Claudette. I'm sure you understand. Once you sign, all these unfortunate problems you've been experiencing will disappear. I'll personally make sure of it. The threat wasn't even veiled. Sign and submit, or refuse, and be destroyed. I met with Trevor, Simone, Diane, and Lucia that night. We sat in Trevor's cramped apartment, surrounded by evidence and legal documents, and we came up with a plan. It was risky. Possibly illegal in ways I didn't want to think about too carefully. Definitely insane. But it was the only way to stop him from doing this to another woman. I signed the NDA. Gregory visibly relaxed, became affectionate again, started planning our honeymoon like nothing had ever been wrong. The attacks on my career immediately stopped. My accounts were unfrozen. The investigations quietly went away. He thought he'd won. He thought I'd been broken, like all the others. The wedding was set for the Grandview Estate, this sprawling venue with marble floors and crystal chandeliers and gardens that looked like something from a European palace. Gregory invited everyone who mattered in his world: politicians, business titans, celebrities, media moguls. He arranged for the ceremony to be live-streamed. This wasn't just a wedding. This was his victory lap. His proof that he was untouchable. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up feeling strangely calm. My bridesmaids kept commenting on how peaceful I seemed, how I wasn't nervous at all. They expected jitters, but I felt focused, clear. I'd spent the previous night going over every detail of the plan with Trevor. Simone, Diane, and Lucia were all attending, invited as guests from my side. Trevor had already contacted the FBI with evidence of Gregory's fraud, witness tampering, and conspiracy. Federal agents would be positioned outside the venue. I walked down that aisle in a gown that cost $40,000. 300 people stood and watched. Gregory waited at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, smiling that devastating smile, probably already thinking about the press coverage and what this would do for his image. The officiant, some federal judge Gregory played golf with, began the ceremony with all the traditional words about love and commitment and partnership. When we reached the vows, Gregory went first. He talked about how I'd changed his life, how he'd never met anyone as brilliant and beautiful as me, how our partnership would change the world. He was convincing. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for what I was about to do. Almost. Then it was my turn. I pulled out my phone. Gregory's smile faltered slightly. I'd told him I wanted to read my vows from my phone because they were too long to memorize. He'd found it charming. Now I connected to the venue's AV system. Trevor had helped me set this up earlier with the technical crew, claiming I wanted to display a video montage as a surprise. Every screen in that venue suddenly showed my phone's display. Gregory, I began, my voice steady and amplified through the sound system. When I met you 6 months ago, I thought I'd found my soulmate, a partner who valued my mind, celebrated my success, and loved me for exactly who I was. I paused, but what I actually found was a predator who's made a career out of destroying women like me. The room went absolutely silent. You could hear the collective intake of breath. Gregory reached for my hand, but I stepped back. For everyone watching, both here and on the live stream that now has over 100,000 viewers, I want to introduce you to 3 extraordinary women. I gestured to the audience, where Simone, Diane, and Lucia stood up. Dr. Simone Baptiste, cardiac surgeon. Diane Winters, civil rights attorney. Dr. Lucia Henderson, literary scholar. All brilliant, all accomplished, and all formerly engaged to the man standing beside me. I started displaying the documents on every screen in the room. Settlement agreements, bank transfers, emails. Gregory Whitmore has a very specific pattern. He targets successful Black women, proposes to us in grand public spectacles to burnish his progressive image, and then spends our engagement systematically destroying our careers and reputations. He fabricates evidence, he bribes witnesses, he uses his wealth and power to ensure that by the time our wedding date approaches, we're so desperate and broken that we'll sign anything to make it stop. The screens showed emails between Gregory and Harrison Cole discussing their projects. I read some aloud. Claudette's professional licenses under review should have her compliant by the wedding date. Another, IRS audit proceeding as planned. She'll sign the NDA within a week. I played audio recordings of phone conversations about paying off witnesses and creating false documentation. Gregory lunged for me, but his own brother, his best man, grabbed his arm and held him back. The look on Gregory's face was something I'll never forget. Rage, shock, and the dawning realization that everything was falling apart. I signed an NDA 2 weeks ago, I continued, looking directly at him. I signed it because you gave me no choice. You'd already started destroying my career, my finances, my reputation. But here's what you didn't count on, Gregory. NDAs can't protect you from federal crimes, fraud, extortion, witness tampering, conspiracy. The FBI has all of this evidence now, and they're here. Federal agents entered through multiple doors. Harrison Cole tried to bolt, but was immediately detained. The wedding guests sat frozen, many filming on their phones. The live stream viewer count was climbing rapidly. 200,000, 300,000, 500,000. This was going viral in real time. Gregory's mother, sitting in the front row, did something that still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. She stood up, walked over to me, took my hand, and said, "I am so sorry. Thank you for your courage." Then she turned to her son and said, "You disgust me." Gregory and Harrison were arrested that day. The charges would eventually put Gregory away for 15 years and Harrison for 8. Gregory's business empire collapsed within weeks. Assets frozen, investors fleeing, properties seized. The media coverage was relentless and brutal. Every detail of what he'd done came out. Other victims started coming forward. Women who'd taken settlements years ago broke their NDAs, knowing they'd finally be believed. The 3 women I'd helped expose had their names cleared. Simone returned to cardiac surgery at a major hospital. Diane was reinstated to the bar and now runs a firm specializing in civil rights cases. Lucia became a dean at a prestigious university. As for me, I used what remained of my resources to start a nonprofit organization that builds affordable housing specifically for women escaping abusive situations. The 4 of us remain close friends, supporting each other and reminding each other that our voices have power.